family. How's everybody? I hope this Saturday finds everybody well today. I want to welcome you in to another edition of Sunday School Saturday. This is actually our 41st edition, and I want to thank you all for joining in on today. I'm asking that you be able to get your notepads, iPads, any kind of source that you find for you to be able to study the Word with us on today. So please come in and join us. Again, I pray that this Saturday finds you all well. We're going to continue our lesson on today, talking about the light of the world. The light of the world is coming out of John chapter 8, and we're looking at verses 12 through 20, which we looked over some of that on last week. We're also doing chapter 12, verses 44 through 46. So again, please get your iPads, pens, pencils, notepads. We're going to get into some in-depth scripture talking about Jesus Christ being the light of the world and how that light sheds light on really what's going on in this world today. We're dealing with a lot of difficult times and situations on today in this world, and Jesus is that light of the world that can give us the opportunity to be able to come out of the darkness. So I'm going to get with just a brief introduction, and then we're going to get right into some scripture. In the introduction to this lesson, Jesus pleased his Father in all ways, as we have seen this quarter, including in what he taught. The Lord taught the truth about himself and God in perfect and love and perfect accuracy. In particular, the Gospel of John includes 7 significant I am statements by Jesus, which offer a great deal of insight into who he truly is and what he came to accomplish. We talked about that on our previous lesson when Jesus said that I am the bread of life. And now in this lesson right here, Jesus is talking about I am the light of the world. And that's coming out of John chapter 8 and verse 12. The other I ams is I am the door. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus said, I am the true vine. Jesus gives light to a dark world. Now, 3 topics that we really want to be able to point out in this lesson that we talked about on last week, and then that we're going into this week. And I'm hoping that I'm being able to conclude this lesson on this week. But the 3 main topics of this lesson, one is the offer of light. That's John 8, 12 through 16. The offer of witnesses. That's John 8, 17 through 20. And the offer of escape from darkness, and that's John chapter 12, verses 44 through 46. Now, we talked about on last week, we talked about the offer of light. And this is when Jesus was trying to explain to the Pharisees who he was and that he was the light of the world. And he was trying to explain to them about him being the Son of God. And he was trying to explain to them that he was actually God who came down in the flesh. And the Pharisees were so stuck on the Old Testament laws to where they tried to question who Jesus said he was. And they was trying to use scripture from the Old Testament, from the old laws, in order to be able to try to trip Jesus up on what he was saying. But then this kind of put light on how some people, they'll take a scripture and then they'll take it out of context and get you not to believe what it is of what you're saying. So everything that Jesus was saying to them, he was able to back it up, even though they came with some other scripture that came out of the Old Testament. So we need to understand that what Jesus says, Jesus did not come. Jesus came to fulfill the law. Jesus did not come that we don't live by the law, but Jesus knows the scripture because Jesus was talked about in the Old Testament. And so they were trying to use God's words against God. And so sometimes we need to realize that when we're talking to some seasoned Christians, those who really study scripture, those who really study the Bible, we need to realize the fact that we can't be tripped up. You need to study to show yourself approved. And they were trying to trip Jesus up when Jesus was God and the one who gave scripture even in the Old Testament. So we're going to get deeper into that. And then the topic that we're talking about today is the offer of witnesses. And so this is what Jesus was trying to show to the Pharisees, who are the leaders of the church, who are the preachers of the church. And he was trying to show them and tell them who he is, and that he is God in the flesh, and that he is the Son of God. And they were trying to trip him up. So the topic we're talking about today is the offer of witnesses, and that's coming out of John chapter 8, and that's verses 17 through 20. John chapter 8, 17 through 20. And verse 17 reads, "It is also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I am one that bear witness of myself, and the Father that sent me beareth witness of me. Then said they unto him, Where is thy Father? Jesus answered, You neither know me nor my Father. If you had known me, you should have known my Father also." John 8 and 20 reads, "These words spake Jesus in the treasury as he taught in the temple, and no man laid hands on him, for his hour was not yet come." So again, we're talking about the topic of bearing testimony. And it says in the Sunday school lesson, it says the Mosaic law stated, "At the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death. But at the mouth of one witness he shall not be put to death." That's Deuteronomy chapter 17 and verse 6. This was also true of other matters. "One witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity, or for any sin in any sin that he sinneth. At the mouth of two witnesses, or at the mouth of three witnesses, shall the matter be established." That's Deuteronomy chapter 19 and verse 15. See, the Pharisees, they tried to apply this principle to Jesus. They were also mockingly reminding him of what he had said on an earlier occasion. Jesus spoke these words. He said, "If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true." And that's what Jesus said in John chapter 5, verse 31. And see, this is one of the good examples of how the scripture was taken out of context. They took one scripture and they took that out of context and tried to make Jesus not believe what he was saying. And see, sometimes we're talking to some people and we're not going along with their worldly perspective of things. We're not going with what the world says, but we're going with what scripture says. And some people will take one scripture in order to try to prove themselves right and make it as though you don't understand what the scripture truly says. And so in this John 5:31, it says that Jesus spoke, "If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true." Yes, he did say that. But there are scriptures before that, and there's a scripture after that. And we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. At that time, of course, he had explained what he meant, but the Pharisees ignored that. So now Jesus proceeded to point out that the law did require two witnesses for validating truth, and that he did indeed have two witnesses. He bore witness regarding himself, and the Father who sent him also testified of him. So there is his two witnesses. So anytime that Jesus speaks on something, Jesus has something to back it up. John's gospel has already established the fact that John the Baptist had come as a witness for Jesus. Please go with me to John. That's where our lesson is coming from, out of the book of John. But I want us to go to John chapter 1. Please go with me to John chapter 1, or if you have a notepad, please write the scriptures. We have a few more scriptures that are going to come in this lesson, and I ask that you please write these down in your notes. Please go with me to John chapter 1, and we're going to look at verse 6 and 7. John chapter 1, verse 6 and 7.